You are listening to Packers Talk Radio Network.
Packers Talk.
Eddie Lacy, Mike Daniels, Gilbert Brown, Don Barclay, Micah Hyde, your Green Bay Packers, yesterday's legends and today's superstars. From corporate or nonprofit events to private parties, add some spice, hire a Packers player from Mayfield Sports Marketing. For details, just go to PackersTalk.com and click on Player Appearances.
Are you looking for some signed Packer memorabilia?
Look no further than Waukesha Sports Card.
If a Green Bay Packer can sign it, Waukesha Sports Cards has it.
Check our website for upcoming Packer player and legend signings.
Go to WaukeshaSportsCards.com.
Packers Therapy.
It's Packers Therapy. It's Chris and it's Dave. And we are going to talk to you today for the next, I don't know, Dave, what, hour and a half, 2 hours, 3 hours?
We might pull an all-nighter.
I know. This is going to be an all-nighter. Packers win, regain first place. They beat the Vikings 30-13, moved to 7-3 on the season. That's a tie with the Vikings, but by virtue of the tiebreaker, Packers return to first place. Got to tell you, Dave, this one felt a lot more like a Packer game should feel. But were you surprised a bit by really kind of how decisive the performance was, especially on the road?
I was surprised by one thing mainly, and that was James Jones' decision to wear a hoodie.
That was sweet, wasn't it?
Did you see that?
I loved it. Yeah, we noticed that right away.
Well, we went to the Packer Pro Shop, and there are many, many items that you could wear as a Packer player or as a Packer fan. I can't imagine that the hoodie was the greatest of choices. One is, I don't think you should wear any kind of equipment that can be grabbed from behind.
Exactly.
Although he's running so slow that maybe the hood never leaves his back, so that's never going to be a problem. But I was surprised by that. I was surprised by the play of the defense. I thought that defense, ever since, I guess, the San Diego game, they played so poorly that I didn't expect them to have the kind of performance that they had. I'm not surprised the Packers won. I think I said at the end of the last podcast, I think they're going to win, or maybe I just said that to myself, but I thought they were actually going to win. I thought the pressure was going to be all on Minnesota. They're at home. This is their time. That amount of pressure. And I thought that the Packers losing last week might have forced them to kind of wake up a little bit and either play with more passion on defense, which they did, or to be a little bit more creative on offense or do some things a little bit different. And I don't know if they necessarily did that, which I guess there are things we should talk about. But I'm actually not surprised they won. Winning 30-13, maybe a little surprised by the spread of how they won. And maybe it's more reflection that Minnesota was not as good as people had thought they were.
Well, at least they weren't as good last Sunday. Or we're doing this on Monday, so if they weren't as good yesterday as a lot of people thought, I had not watched a lot of Vikings games, just the highlights and the little bit you see here and there, but I had seen 5 wins in a row, and I figured they got this thing rolling and they're playing well. I had seen Peterson's rushing numbers were impressive this season.
Yeah, getting better and better too, right?
And so when I saw that they had held Peterson to 45 yards, 13 carries. A big part of that is because he only got 13 carries. But the 45 yards, I mean, gosh, I did not see that coming at all. I figured if they were going to win, Peterson was going to get his yards. The fact that they were able to win by, comfortable margin, 17 points, and do it on the road, really surprised me. And the fact that Peterson was really a non-factor, long run of 11 yards, that was surprising, and then you overlay that against the fact that, the Packer offense wasn't really a juggernaut. I mean, they did not do whatever they wanted to do. They did enough, obviously, but Rodgers, was under 50% in passing. I mean, again, a passer rating below 90, around 87. Heck, I mean, Bridgewater even had a passer rating over 100, and somehow, the Packers still managed to win and win comfortably. And I think a lot of credit's got to go to the Packer defense, especially their ability to make Minnesota one-dimensional. I think that was huge. And the guys along the defensive line, really step up. I thought B.J. Raji was extremely active, but the real surprise to me was Dayton Jones. I mean, that guy was terrific. He's sacking the quarterback. He's setting the edge. He was just solid. He defensed the pass. So props, Packer defense, especially that defensive line.
Yeah, do you think that emotion plays into it more than we realize? Because they certainly looked up in this game, and they played with a ton of passion. It made me think of how they played against Seattle, and they were very motivated and very up for that game. And then they play on the road against Denver. They play at home against San Diego. There's some games where they just look like they're going through the motions. And do you think I think there's a lot of talent to this team. So I don't think they're just bad overall, and sometimes they play over their heads. I think they're talented enough to play this way every week. Is it they come to play some games and sometimes they don't? Is it scheme? Is Dom more aggressive sometimes and sometimes he's not? I've heard someone say that, hey, maybe you said this, when Dom has a lead, he's super aggressive, but when it's tied or we're losing, he plays so conservative that it's like a different defense out there. Or is it matchups? I mean, what do you think is the difference?
I'm not sure that it's necessarily scheme. I think what's hard for me to understand is the game we went to a week ago against Detroit at Lambeau Field. Detroit's a struggling team. They don't have very good players anyplace, really. I mean, they've got a good quarterback. They have an exceptional wide receiver, but they don't have a lot of good players. 0 sacks.
0 sacks, and not even close. We couldn't see. I didn't see the game on TV because we were there, but I mean, from what I could tell, it never looked like he was. A guy almost got him, right? That's what it seemed like to me.
And yet, against the Vikings, it gets 6 sacks, and it wasn't just the 6 sacks. It seemed like pretty much every time Bridgewater was back to pass, he was being hurried. Now, I know he passed for almost 300 yards, but, they were getting pressure on him consistently, and they were winning the battle, both against the pass and against the run. I don't think that the Minnesota defensive or offensive line is that much worse than the Lions. In fact, I'd say it's probably a better unit, and somehow, they played on defense. They were superior, if not dominant. I don't know if you can be dominant when you give up almost 300 yards passing, but still, what passes for dominance in today's NFL? I thought that the Packer defense was pretty much that. I mean, they made plays when they have to, and how can that happen on the road against a team that was 7-2, when at home, when you're playing at home against a team that's 1-7, you really can't get out of your own way to save yourself, against Detroit. It just didn't really – it didn't make a lot of sense. Now, not that Matthew Stafford tore him up, but they weren't able to get to him. And I guess part of it was the offense not doing its part. But still, they scored 18 points.
Yeah, it's really funny. I don't know if the offense played better, so maybe the defense stays in the game longer because we're winning or the offense is playing well. That's sort of a team approach that they play that much better. I wonder if Minnesota was playing a different kind of offense where they had receivers going down the field more, and so it gave more time to go after Bridgewater. I mean, Bridgewater's a running quarterback too, so you think he would be a little bit harder to sack, but maybe because he runs. I mean, there was at least 1 or 2 sacks that I think he started to scramble. He got him,
right?
So maybe that accounted for a couple of sacks where Stafford might have thrown it away. But I definitely thought they harassed Bridgewater a lot more than Stafford, and it just seemed to me like they were really pumped up for this game, and they played that much better. And that means, if we can make the playoffs, they're going to be up for those games. If the defense can play this well, then it all has to do with, can the offense kind of figure things out? And the question I have in this game is they scored 30. The defense turned over, gave them 1 turnover. It's just 1 turnover, I think, right, on the fumble.
Yeah, I think that's right.
So that may have helped a little bit on the scoring, but I don't feel, as much as the defense played really well, I didn't feel super confident that we've answered all the questions on offense for this team. I mean, I'm hearing a lot of people talk about Eddie Lacy's performance, and I'm a huge Eddie Lacy fan, but I don't think the run game is clicking very well. A couple of things I want to talk about that, but I don't think that the rushing is that good. There's a lot of negative rushing plays or 0 to 1 yard plays that they have. Yesterday a lot of them were James Starks.
Yeah.
So, is Starks the answer? Is he not the answer? I mean, this flip-flop going on is pretty confusing.
Well, Eddie Lacy seemed like Eddie Lacy yesterday.
He did, but is it because he had some running room to have? Is the type of running plays that they're running? I mean, he certainly does better running downhill with a head of steam in front of him and hits the hole and kind of, whether it's there or not, he pushes forward for 3 to 4 yards almost every time. That's the Eddie Lacy I sort of remember. When he's got a little bit of a hole, then he's great. I mean, he's big, but he's shifty too. But did you get a sense that the running game is in good shape now?
No, I didn't really get that sense. I mean, they rushed the ball 34 times. I guess 31 if you take away the Rodgers stuff, and
right.
Rodgers passed 34 times. So, pretty much a dead 50-50 split run pass. So maybe part of it, is that they, gave the ball a lot to the backs. I mean, between Lacy and Starks, 30 times. And that's, I think that's definitely a factor in why the running game worked, is because they made it work. I think that was a big part of it.
I'd argue with that. They ran 31 times because they were winning, not because it was working. I mean, if they're not scoring on a couple of passing plays and get a lead, I don't think they're running effectively, and I don't think they run for 30 times. If this game is close or they're behind, they're running 15 times. So I think the passing game creates everything for this team. It makes the defense play better, or they're more pumped up. They think the rushing game is more effective. So I think everything hinges on, can Rodgers sort of figure it out, and can the receivers get open? I mean, I don't know how they probably ran somewhat evenly throughout the game, but it was because they got a lead early or the game was close and they stayed ahead. I thought they ran the ball a lot more. But Chris, they ran a ton on first down. I felt that they were pretty vanilla in they'd run on first down and throw on second and third, and rarely did they pass on. I haven't looked at the stats to prove this out, but it just felt like they were running always on first, hardly ever passing, and then they gave up right away, but until the very end. So I don't know. I think Lacy is as good a guy as they have. I think he's much better than James Starks. They need him to be special for them to go far into the playoffs. But I think the line is not that great in the run game, and I think he's dinged up, and I think they'll be an effective running team if the passing game is on, not that they should all of a sudden be a rushing team.
Well, yeah, but that's the way they've always been. I mean, they've always been a team that relies on the pass. But you got to remember that of Lacy's 22 carries, 9 of those were for 5 yards or longer. So I would say that the run game was working, and that's why I think why they stuck with it is a lot of times I think they get away from the run because you're getting 1 yard, 3 yards, 2 yards. I mean, you're not really getting much on the ground, so you go away from it. I think one of the reasons why they ran so much is because it was being effective. When Lacy's averaging 4.5 yards a carry, it becomes easier when you know you have a chance of, especially on first down. If you can make a first down and gain 4 or 5 yards and put yourself in a 2nd and 5, I mean that's a good situation. A lot of times they are not doing that. You're winding up at 2nd and 8, and then you got to pass again. So I think one of the reasons they stuck with the runs because they were getting some success with it.
Yeah. I guess it's a chicken and egg thing for sure. I mean, if the run game is helping, or they're doing a lot of, they're being successful in sort of mixing it up. The run game helps the pass game, vice versa. They score, and then you can run the ball more. So I guess I just don't see this team as a running team. I think Lacy, has got to be there to help create 2nd and 6, 2nd and 5s as opposed to 2nd and 10s. Yeah. If he can do that, the offense clicks much better. But let's flip this back. I want to talk about the passing game. And so what you thought about that. I thought the main storyline with this game is that Rodgers missed a few wide open guys. There are a lot of drops in this game, so that was kind of a new thing, especially Randall Cobb dropping. I mean,
at least 3 passes, right? At least 3 dropped.
he's so sure-handed, and he made one catch in the game that I just thought, like, man, that guy can catch in traffic like nobody's business. And then he drops 3. I'm not quite sure what's going on with him, if that's just a one-off game thing or, that's one of the things. When you're struggling, everyone struggles, right?
He dropped a couple last week, though, too.
Yeah, well, the team is struggling. So sometimes you press, sometimes you're trying to think of other receivers and where they are, and you're just not focusing on your job. So I can, that may be more going on side him, but it's a lot of drops, and his production really has fallen off. I mean, even this game, 2 catches for 24 yards. That's not your number one receiver type numbers that you need him to have. I mean, he needs to step up and really be a factor going forward.
Yeah, he had 9 targets too. It's only, that'd be 22%. I mean, that's something's wrong. I mean, he should have had 5 catches in 9 targets, which would have been a little more respectable.
Yeah. Hey, what do you think about this? I look at James Jones and the way he catches the ball in traffic in the end zone. The catch he made in the end zone on the sideline is just beautiful. And then he caught a nice one down the sideline, too.
Oh, yeah, that 37-yarder. Yeah, that was nice.
Very nice. But I almost think that until you get to the red zone or close to it, why don't they let Jeff Janis play more and stretch the field? Up until, between the 20s when you're doing most of, the offense, having a guy in there that can go deep, I think is going to help the run game, help the other receivers. What do you think the deal is, and why don't they want Jeff Janis to play?
Well, I think we saw it this game. How many passes were there where Rodgers believed a receiver was going to go one direction and the guy goes another? And these were typically guys like, Randall Cobb or Devontae Adams. Here's Rodgers back to pass, and he throws it where nobody is. And that's because he expected one thing. Well, if your experienced guys are doing that, I think that's why we're not seeing Janis, is because Rodgers probably has no clue that Janis is seeing the same thing that he is. And the way I understand modern NFL scheme is that the receivers have to look and see how they're being covered. And the quarterbacks, which is why they do their meetings together, are supposed to see the coverages the same way. And then based on the coverage that they're seeing, they both have to see the same thing and adjust. So you have a route tree that has several different options that can be run on a particular play, and you run the route that is based on how the defense is playing you. That means that the receiver has to see it and the quarterback has to see it. They both have to know in their heads that, he's playing me on my right shoulder, so I'm going to go left, and the quarterback has to then pass it left. Well, we saw several times, we actually saw it in the game that we were at, too, the Detroit game, where, Rodgers is back to pass, and he's seeing something, and he's throwing it to a place where nobody is, because the old expression, they zigged when he zagged, and consequently, it luckily isn't picked off, but it's an empty play. It's an empty down. And so I think that's why Janis isn't playing, is because as much trouble as Rodgers is having communicating with the guys he knows, with Jones and Cobbs and Adams, I think he's not even that good with Janis. And I'm not sure if that's because Janis hasn't played enough to be able to even begin to understand how they're covering him on defense, so he runs the right route consistently. What he does know how to do is he's fast enough, and when they threw to him yesterday, it was, you run down the field and I'll throw it down there. And that seems to be the play that he knows, because there's not any route running really. It's just kind of run by guys. And I think that's, at this point, I think that's what he does, that he doesn't know enough of the offense to see the same things that Rodgers is seeing.
Well, we're more than halfway through the season, and it's not fair to have a guy on the roster, and you're going to take Ted Thompson's view of, I'm going to build from within and build guys through my draft picks and not have any senior guys, and then add those guys on your team and say, I don't trust them, so they're not going to play, when clearly you need a position player like him who's fast. I mean, the guy is clearly fast. You saw him on the kickoff return. The guy is super fast. And, his play of that pass interference, I thought, really turned this game around, because the Packers scored before half, and then they scored again with the field goal right after half, and I thought that's when the game really was put solidly in their possession. It was hard for Minnesota to come.
I love it when they defer because, I mean, that seems to happen frequently enough. They didn't double up with touchdowns, but they got 10 unanswered points, and that was a bonus.
Yeah, when's the last time, though, that's happened? I don't remember it happening this year.
It happened earlier this year.
Maybe. I remember it happened a lot in 2011.
Yeah,
it felt like it happened
right.
all the time. But, if you go back, before half, it was 1st and 10 on the Green Bay 20, and Rodgers was sacked on 2nd down, making it 3rd and 15. They were about to punt if they don't loft it up there for Janis and just go for it. And sure enough, get a pass interference. That was a huge turning point in the game.
I agree. Yep.
I agree, and I understand what you're saying with the route trees and not being on the same page and all that. But listen, this is the team they have, and it's not fair that they are going to have that kind of standard and meanwhile have rookies running all over the place. They're going to have to figure a way to get this guy in the game to play, even if it's just to take a safety and a cornerback off, beyond 20 yards or something. But I just think with James Jones and Devontae Adams and Cobb, you have 3 guys that I think Cobb is a little bit different, but in terms of speed, and I think they're all very similar. And this is not going to help that offense get to where it needs to be by the end of the year. If they can figure that out, if Janis kind of comes into play, just hear me out. Say they figure out a way to use him, they become a more effective passing team. It creates a better run game. Offense is clicking better. The defense now is playing inspired. I think we can get back to where we were. And this reminds me of another question. Where in the world is Ty Montgomery?
He's hurt. He's hurt.
I know, but is he no longer coming back? I didn't think he was out for 6 weeks.
Oh, he's got the high ankle sprain, and he's been out about a month now, I guess, right?
Yeah, I didn't realize
it might be longer because that's a significant ankle injury he has.
Okay, well, because Lacey's got an ankle, and Barnett's got an ankle. There are all these different ankle injuries, and I don't remember everyone being out as long as he is. But
well, because he has a more significant, severe injury, and it's again, I don't know what the difference is from the user standpoint of the high ankle versus a lower ankle sprain. But I do know that when that injury has happened in the past to other players, that is a longer-term deal. It's like a 6-week deal as opposed to a 2-week deal.
Well, you talk a lot about it's not your record during the season. It's not who's hot at the beginning. It's who's hot at the end,
exactly.
Right? If the rest of this season can be the Jeff Janis experiment to try to slowly get him into the offense till, the end of the year, imagine your receivers are Cobb, if Janis is in there for your speed receiver, and then, I don't know, pick Adams, Jones, or both, and the passing offense is clicking, now all of a sudden you kind of look at this team and say, we've got a shot. I don't believe that Dallas, I guess, is still pretty far down, but I think Dallas is pretty good. I think Seattle is tough. And then you got Arizona and Carolina. Those are probably the teams you're going to end up facing, I think, at the end of the year. I think the Packers can line up with any one of those. Although I did watch Arizona last night, and I think Arizona looks pretty good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know if they're going to play Carolina anytime during the season or if they have already, but I thought, as much as Carolina I thought looked pretty good, I thought Arizona looked very good. I still think the Packers can take both those guys.
Well, I think Jeff Janis has a role to play on this team, and I think he showed it with that 70-yard kickoff return. And he's got a role to play. I think he showed it a couple of times, even though he didn't catch any passes, by trying to break some of that defense up by running off some of the coverages. I don't think they necessarily have to have him, as in a feature position where he's going to be a regular part of the offense if he doesn't really know it. I would prefer that they go with guys that have a better sense of where to be when Rodgers is looking for them to be a certain place, and then let Janis contribute in his specialty roles, and that would be right now as a kickoff returner, and also as the guy that can beat some of these man coverages, and if nothing else, give the defense something to think about when he's on the field, so they can't bottle up the defenders as much as they have been able to. So I think, Dave, he can contribute without necessarily being one of their top 2 or 3 guys.
Yeah, I disagree with you. I think if they're going to stay with the receivers that they have now and stick with that offense against good defenses like, Arizona and Carolina are good defenses, they're going to struggle to score. And I think they lose, and I think that you can lose one or the other. It's still going to be a loss, and I feel like they've got to change the offense to be more dynamic, more faster, more unpredictable. And I just don't think it's with those 3 guys. So, I don't know, if Ty Montgomery comes back, I guess with a high ankle sprain, when you recover from that, that's probably not going to be...
He wasn't really a burner before. He was more elusive than he was fast.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's... Well, I thought he was... But that I wouldn't call Devontae Adams elusive, would you? I don't think he's elusive or fast. And James Jones, I don't think you call elusive or fast.
Well,
I'm not sure what Devontae Adams is exactly.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. I'm still not convinced he's... anything more than, a nice number 4 kind of complimentary receiver. But James Jones, I don't want to say elusive, but, he knows how to get where he's got to be. And 6 catches yesterday, over 100 yards. That's something that I think that he brings the offense, is his ability to communicate with Rodgers. And I think that's actually one of Cobb's strengths, too. He seems to be a weakness, seems to be catching the ball right now, but both Cobb and Jones, that's what they do. I don't think that Adams has that kind of, mental telepathy, that Rodgers really needs. And I think actually that Richard Rodgers is playing as much as he is, besides being a gifted lyricist. I think that he's playing as much as he is because Rodgers, knows where he's going to be. And I don't think Janice has accomplished that yet.
Yeah, maybe that's just the fans' reaction. We see a couple good plays and, throw them in there. We want them to play. I think it's more than that. I think we're just going to have to agree to disagree. And I hope that the Packers start to figure out over time that get them more involved in the offense. This is a playmaker, not just a third and 8 kind of guy that can get you a first down, but a guy that can really take the lid off the defense. And I think that's a huge thing that they're missing that they had with Jordy Nelson and that no one else on this team can fill. And when the defense just packs it all in to 10 yards, we struggle mightily in the passing game. So we'll see. I'm not very hopeful. I think a lot of times the Packers end up doing more what you think and being more conservative and kind of playing what you know and kind of keep it in front of you kind of thing, rather than, just go for it. Let's take a risk. Let's take a chance. But I think that might win them double-digit wins, but I think it means an early exit in the playoffs unless they can, unless James Jones or Cobb or Adams become a lot faster. Because even in this game, I didn't feel like the passing game was, guys were open. There were a lot of catching, in traffic, good throws by Rodgers a lot of times, but, guys are not running free. And you watch other games in the NFL, there's a lot of times there are receivers running open, splitting the zone, outrunning a linebacker, all kinds of things that are happening with their free. And I never see that with the Packers right now. So I think we're just going to agree to disagree on that.
Well, that article that appeared in the paper a couple weeks ago about the speed of the Packer receivers, and they noted that they were the slowest, group of receivers in the NFL. Well, I think the next slowest was New England, and you don't hear any comments about them not being fast enough. And
they have a much better tight end,
right? But they seem to do just fine without having a lot of burners. So. Well, and I don't know, what are you suggesting? Jeff Janis gain 35 pounds and play tight end? I mean, that would be fine. In fact, I suggested that yesterday when I was watching the game. I told my son, hey, I wonder if they can beef him up and let him play tight end.
No, but I think it's a big help. I mean, they run Gronkowski deep down the middle against linebackers, and that there's a deep threat on that team. Yeah, it's a tight end, but there's a bit of a difference maker that they have. I don't know if you can quite make an apples-to-apples comparison with New England. And I think, our tight ends are not even average. I would say they fall below average. So you've got a below-average tight end, and you've got super slow receivers. I mean, it's no wonder it's hard in the passing game.
But, come on now. I mean, they're missing one guy. They're missing Jordy Nelson, and Jordy Nelson wasn't really a burner.
No, but well, he played.
See, I'm not buying
true.
the stuff about. I'm not buying the stuff about super slow receivers. I think that's invalid because again, New England's guys aren't very fast and they're highly effective. They don't throw the ball every time to Gronkowski. And likewise, the only guy who's not there this year is Jordy Nelson, and he wasn't like some kind of 4-2 runner.
He ran deep balls all the time. How many times do you see him catch touchdowns that were 50-plus yards? I mean, somehow he was able to stretch the defense. How many times did they throw deep against Detroit?
Dave, they weren't like he
outran.
That's
true, but he's
and
running down the
James
sideline.
Jones outran guys this year to the end zone on a 65-yard touchdown earlier this year.
Well, how many times did they throw deep against Detroit?
I don't have it in front of me. I'm not sure. He threw 61 times, so it's hard to know. I mean, and also, what's deep? I mean, they threw a 35-yard pass to Abadaris. Is that throwing deep? I don't know. I mean, are you looking for how many times did Rodgers throw it 65 yards in the air? I don't know. I think probably 0. But that's not the only way to win. I mean, a lot of those long touchdowns that you're remembering are, passes that were 25 yards, and
sure,
and Jordy's running diagonally across the field.
That's right.
But that's exactly
right.
what
and they have no guys that can do that right now. They have no guys that can do that.
That's not true because James Jones did it earlier this year, and Randall Cobb has done it many times in the past. I don't know why he's not doing it this year. I don't think he's running a 5-second 40 all of a sudden.
Well, then what's your explanation to why the Packers' passing offense is not very good?
Because we went over this last week. I don't think their offensive line is nearly as good. You're playing with 2 injured tackles. Well, one tackle, can't remember if he had surgery, so maybe he has some sort of concussion or brain injury. It's hard to know. But Bulaga's not himself. It was probably good that Corey Linsley got hurt. Now, I don't mean in the sense that I'm glad he's hurt. I'm not saying that. I don't like anybody to get hurt, but they're probably better than him getting pushed back and ragdolled all the time. The middle of that line has not been nearly as stout as it has been in the past. Now, have they been terrible? No, but they have not been as good as they've been in the past. So that's one thing. I think Aaron Rodgers has been playing hurt. I don't know if that was, this week he looked a little better, but there's something wrong going on there with that guy. We saw it the past couple of weeks. You can see the wincing, that's going on, and the slow to get up kind of stuff. So I think that's not quite right. I do think not having Jordy Nelson is a factor, but it's one factor among a half a dozen other things that when combined together gives you a sluggish passing offense. I don't think there's this kind of silver bullet that you can say, that's it, and if we can fix it, that's the answer. They did some things this week. They trotted out a couple of new formations. We talked about this last week. I thought that's what they would do. They didn't change the entire offense, but what they did do was they tried a couple of this stacked I formation, either behind the right guard or left guard, as opposed to directly, behind Rodgers when he's taking the snap under center. I mean, they did a couple of different things to try to give you some new looks. So, I mean, they're trying to do what they can, but when your offensive line is, again, not terrible, but banged up a little, and your quarterback is not 100%, and your receivers, you're missing your main guy, and the guys you're playing with are, they're okay, but they're not great. Yeah, you're going to have a sluggish offense. I don't think – and also, think about this, too. I forgot this. Eddie Lacy played great, but where has he been for the past several weeks? I mean, the guy's been nowhere. So your passing game is going to be effective when you don't have a running game. And Lacy, for whatever reason, and I don't know if it's his weight. I think it's I think it's the ankle that he hurt just never really got better. But these guys are playing hurt, and that's what you get when guys play hurt.
Well, I agree with you that it's a combination of many things like we talked about. But I feel like you've got to chip away back at what you've lost. I mean, you know where you are, and if you just say, well, let's just hope his ankle gets better, let's hope the offensive line plays better, that's no good. You've got to try to get some of that back, and that's by, I think they did some things. I think they did some things by running some different plays. They didn't run the same old thing that they ran against Detroit. And I think you need to upgrade the talent. Well, we'll soon find out.
It's the middle of the
see if
season,
you're laughing.
Dave. You can't do anything on that. It's like, well, the offensive line's not playing up to par. Well, what? Do you want to see them like trot out Lane Taylor out there?
No, you misunderstood me. I was saying you can't do that. You can't just
you kind of
throw your hands up.
I mean, at this point, and I don't know if they're playing hurt because it's the culture of the NFL, or if it's because they don't have options. I don't know what it is, but they're not as good when guys are hurt. And I think we're finding out now that these guys are playing, but they're not. You're not getting 100% of Rodgers. You're not getting 100% of Lacey. You're not getting 100% of Bulaga. You're not getting 100% of the left tackle as well. You know, you're not getting. You're getting 0% of Jordy Nelson. Devontae Adams was hurt earlier this year. I'm not sure you're getting 100% of him either. And then all it takes then, Dave, is a couple of dropped passes. I'm watching the game as I always do when we're doing the podcast, and I just saw Rodgers roll to his right and fire a seed, an absolute dart to James Jones, right in his hands for the first down, and he dropped it. There were 3 drop balls on first down. You catch those balls, and the complexion of the game is entirely different. That's 3 more first downs, 3 more times that you're not punting or kicking field goals. You know, things can look a lot worse than they are. And we're talking about a team that won 30-13, but still, they look a lot worse than they are because a couple of things. And you chip away at those edges. I don't think you can scheme your way out of having a half a dozen guys who are playing at 85 or 90%. I just don't think you can do that. You have to hope. You have to hope they can play through it, and then you got to play again in 4 more days. So I'm not expecting a great game against Chicago. They lost a couple more guys. The Packers did in this past game that went on, and you know these other guys don't have any chance to recover from their injuries, and it's going to show. There's no way that's not going to show on the field.
Well, I don't know if you said anything there that disagreed with what I said. My only point is by chipping away at getting your offense back to an acceptable level is the only thing I suggested is that I think they should play Jeff Janis more. I think you play a guy that, 1, I think he's healthy, and 2, he's fast. And I think they need a guy that's fast to play on that in the receiver. And, you know, the guy seems to make plays.
When
he's in the game.
He's caught 2 passes this season.
Well, he had 2 huge plays yesterday. And
one was a pass interference play, and
right.
The other was a 70-yard kickoff return. That has nothing to do with plays from scrimmage.
Well, both. What do you mean? Both those plays counted as yards in their favor, and they scored on both of those times.
It was a pass interference. He didn't really do anything other than allow the defensive back to run into him.
That's crap. I don't think Rodgers doesn't throw that ball if it's James Jones being blanketed by some corner. So he throws it up when he beats his guy, and he creates a pass interference. I don't know how you're not seeing that.
If that's you think is the answer to throw more deep balls and hope for pass interference, I don't think that's a very.
No, I don't hope for just pass interference.
And
wish
the other
they would
thing is the kickoff return on special teams. He's not a special player. Period.
Oh, that's what you said about Eddie Lacy. Too.
Well, you know what? Though?
Well, we should
Eddie
take
Lacy,
a break.
but Eddie Lacy hasn't he hadn't been that good this season. He had a pretty good game yesterday, but he's not been that special.
Yeah. All right.
He's not.
All right. Eddie Lacy's not special.
Well, yeah.
Let's take a break.
Let's
take a break.
He's been hurt. You know.
All right, take a break.
All right. So I'll continue with my evisceration of Dave in just a few minutes. So you'll have to wait as we do our recalibration thing and imagine what we'd sound like if the Packers had lost 30-13. In fact, maybe it'd be a lot more fun. Who knows? But we're going to come back with more Packers therapy. Just give us a second. We'll be right back after this. Back with more Packers therapy. Chris in Plover, Wisconsin, and Dave under the big stainless steel arch in St. Louis, talking about Packers' 30-13 win, regaining first place over the Minnesota football Vikings. We're talking about the Packers' offense. We got a little more to cover there, and then we'll flip to the defensive side of the ball. One thing we talked about during the break, it was about a 95-minute break. Dave and I had lunch, and we sang a couple of folk songs.
Got a massage.
Yeah, that's right. It was a Swedish massage, but anyway, the inverted wishbone. That's a formation they like to go to, but I like the personnel they bring on that, and I think we both agree on that point, that when they bring in the 2 fullbacks, good stuff happens.
Yeah, I like having Lacey as a guy that can bowl people over, and you've got two fullbacks. I mean, I think they have two legitimately good fullbacks in a league that doesn't usually use a lot of fullbacks. I thought that at the end of the game, when everyone knows they're running, they came into that inverted wishbone, and I thought he ran for 8 or 9 yards, and I thought that his option, the hole for him was pretty large, and I thought I'd love to see an offense where could you have Lacey, the two fullbacks, a tight end, and a receiver, or is that too many? Would you I think that's right. So you have 5 linemen.
That, yeah.
5 linemen, the quarterback, tight end, receiver, and then 3. That's 11.
Yep.
Is to run that offense for a bit, especially against a team. Boy, I'd love to have seen them run that against Detroit, who I don't think
I'm
have
not sure that they ran that much.
I only remember seeing this inverted wishbone once yesterday. I think that's something that would have been pretty effective against Detroit. So you basically run most of the time through that.
Right.
Every once in a while you can do play action. You throw the tight end, the receiver, or one of the backs.
Right.
And go that route. Now the only thing is I don't think their offensive line is very big, so maybe it's you're taking a positive and negative together. But I thought that was really an interesting thing to get Ripkowski on the field. I think he and Kuhn will put someone on their back, and then Lacey coming through. I mean, that seems like a sure 3, 4, 5 yard play every time.
I like Ripkowski. I mean, I like his stuff on special teams. I guess he's not always where they want him to be, but when he hits somebody, I think that guy stays hit generally. And yeah. I'm guessing that next year there'll be no John Kuhn, it'll be Ripkowski. And from what I've seen, that's going to be it's going to be, I don't know if it'll be an upgrade, but I don't think they're going to lose a lot at all with that guy. He's like a younger version in lots of ways of John Kuhn. Maybe he seems a little bit bigger too. He certainly is younger, and he puts a lot of guys on the ground. I like what I see of that guy.
Yeah, I'd love to see if they run that play again. The Bears is another team. I think that would work pretty effectively. They were pretty bad run defense last year. I'm not sure if I recall. I thought we had a fair amount of success the first game of the season. I think that's a line, an offense that could be pretty effective. So let's hope they run that again. I hope that if they do, that we're right and that works pretty effectively, rather than trotting out 3 slow receivers out there.
Well, let's flip to the other side of the ball, because really, I think they won this on defense. And upon reflection, as I had time to do during the break, in defense of the Packer defense against Detroit, one of those touchdowns that they scored was after that long kickoff return.
That's right.
So, yeah, they did give up more points against Detroit, but one of them was, one touchdown was teed up. So the defense played well against Detroit.
That's right.
Yesterday, giving up fewer points, but generally speaking, they weren't in the same kind of dire straits that they were after that long kickoff return. So 13 points, you got to like that. And I think there were, besides the defensive line, I thought Sam Shields might have played his best game of the season. A couple of open field tackles I thought that were terrific. I think he might have recovered the Peterson fumble as well, which was caused by the 2 safeties ganging up and knocking the ball out. There were a lot of guys that played well. I mean, Matthews played like Matthews has been playing.
Right.
We mentioned earlier the 6 sacks and Dayton Jones being a man out there. If they can play like that on defense, it's going to be essential, because the offense, for the reasons, whether it's speed or whatever it is, they just aren't what they have been in past years. So the defense has to step up, and if they continue to play like yesterday, if they get it bodes well for these last 6 games down the stretch.
It does, and their defensive line, I think, is just playing exceptional. I don't see B.J. Raji on the tackle chart, but I thought he was really disruptive.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
That guy, disruptive is a better word. Yeah, I think that's exactly what he was.
It's almost as if when he wants to get into the backfield, he can push his guy deep into the backfield. He didn't get a sack, and I don't even see him get a tackle, but I thought he influenced a number of plays. And it kind of seems that when he's doing well, the defense plays well, right? I mean, I thought I
totally agree with that. Yep.
Yeah, and maybe it all starts in the middle. You've got B.J. Raji playing very, very well, and I think Mike Daniels is a sure thing, and Dayton Jones, like you said, is playing very, very good. And boy, he looks the part. Julius Peppers,
he had a player or two.
Yeah, I thought I saw a couple plays early that made me think, why do they even play him at all if he's so effective early and fades? Why don't they just start him in the fourth quarter? I mean, he seems he does in every game that I can remember. When he shines, it's early, and then he disappears.
Yeah.
I wonder if he just let him sit in the sidelines, and then the fourth quarter, it's Peppers time. Like a reliever in baseball.
Or like Reggie White was kind of like that too. He would, second half he would appear, it would seem like, and at least toward the end of his career especially, and he would be a big difference maker. But as he got older, I think he paced himself more. I think that's definitely the case with Peppers.
Yeah, and so I think they limit his snaps. I'm thinking like really limit his snaps and have him come in completely fresh in the fourth quarter. I think they have enough guys where they don't absolutely need him. But I don't know. That's probably a dumb idea. But, I feel like the front defensive line or the center of that line is playing very good. And then, I think Clay Matthews is getting more and more comfortable with middle linebacker, and he made some great, great plays. And I like, Clinton Dix and Morgan Burnett as their safeties. I think as they're getting more used to each other, I think they really only started together toward the end of last year, maybe. I don't know if they had the full year together. And then they missed some time.
The middle
this
last year. I think Clinton Dix did not start at the beginning of the year, and he worked his way in to be a starter, somewhere around mid-season, I think.
And Clinton Dix is, I think he might be a bit underrated. I mean, the problem with that guy is he's around the ball in almost every play. So if there's a bad play, he's usually the result of it. But in terms of an impactful player as safety, I mean, remember we used to have guys that we never even heard of running around back there. I think he's actually playing pretty good. I mean, he had 8 tackles, 1 for a loss. He had a sack. I guess that would be the tackle for the loss. Right. I like him. He's not perfect. He's not Ronnie Lott. But he's pretty effective and he's a big hitter. And I think there's some upside for him. The other guy too, I would say, is I think Demarius Randall is going to be good.
Definitely.
I think he's going to be really good. I don't know why he plays off his man as much as he does. But and I thought there was one play, it was 3rd and 8, and guy basically took 2 yards and caught the ball and ran for 9. It's like, why is he playing so far off his guy? But I think they got a winner with that draft pick there, which is, boy, they really, really needed. With Shields and Randall stepping in for Tramon Williams, I think they've done pretty well there. So I'm looking up and down this defense. I think they're good enough to keep them into any game. But they have to play inspired. I think, Clay Matthews has to stay healthy. But I think this team could be in a lot of games from here on out because this defense I think it's pretty talented.
Did you see Clay kind of limp off at the last play or next to last play of the game? He got up gimpy and kind of limped off the field. And I've not seen him on any injury reports so far. But I thought, oh boy, that's just what they need on a short week, because I really think that he is the critical player. I think you've got a great point on B.J. Raji. And by the way, I'm surprised that he's not on the tackle chart because I just watched a play here with he burst into the backfield, and I guess now that I think about it, he didn't tackle Peterson, but he was confronting him and forcing him to go a different way, and then he ran into Daniel's arms or somebody else. But I thought there were a lot of plays like that for Raji. But these guys in the middle, and Clay is one of them, and Raji is one of them, and you mentioned Clinton Dix. I mean, up the middle of that defense, I think those are really the critical players right there. Don't forget about This is his second year, and he wasn't a starter all of last year. That game he had in the playoffs against Seattle when he had the 2 interceptions, I know he allowed the 2-point conversion too. But he had a spectacular NFC Championship game, and seeing that, and he was a first-year player at that point, you can see the kind of potential he has, and he's not afraid to hit guys. Give him some time. It took Nick Collins a couple seasons, if you remember, to really become more consistent, and the player he was at the end of his career. 2 years before that, he wasn't nearly that good. So I really think that. Probably about the time his contract is expiring, this is going to be, one of the better safeties in the NFC.
I think so too. You bring up Nick Collins. I don't remember Nick Collins being that great. He made the touchdown in the Super Bowl, and I think he was a decent safety. And then the fall off after he got hurt was so severe. I think we've elevated Nick Collins to a status that, like he was no Leroy Butler. I don't believe.
No,
but
I think had he played longer, I think he was on that track. His improvement was so noticeable. His first couple of years, it was like, what is this guy? By his third year, fourth year, I mean, he was an ascending player. In fact, I think he still should be their safety now. I mean, he'll be like, 31 or so? Yeah. And Leroy, I want to say Butler played until, 32, 33? I mean, he might have played longer than that, right? He went on like 2001, and they might have drafted him in like 1990, so he was probably even like 34 when he was done playing. I should look that up. So I think that Collins had years ahead of him. He still had his speed. He learned. I think it's because I think he actually got hurt before he hit his peak, and he was getting so much better so quickly.
Yeah, and maybe that's right. I just feel like we elevate his name in terms of how good he was a little bit, but it's been a while for me to remember that. But my point was, I think Clinton Dix is where Nick Collins was now. I think he's playing pretty well, but he makes dumb plays. He misses tackles, stuff like that happens. But he's around the ball so much that he puts himself at risk of not making plays because he's there. And well, I think he's a pretty solid guy.
To your point, we might, because I don't know that I fully appreciated how good he was till I saw how much that defense sucked without him. Now, you remember he got hurt in 2011, and that's when their defense fell apart. He got hurt in the second game against Carolina, and they were just not the same without that guy. And really, until Black Clinton Dix, the year before, Morgan Burnett played better. But that was like his fourth season too, I think. Right? By the time he got better. And I think maybe it takes a little while for safeties to become impact players in the NFL. There was a good 3 seasons where they were horrible at the back end of that defense, and that made me really appreciate the difference that Nick Collins made, because when he wasn't there, you saw how crappy they were.
Yeah, it's such a shame. Here I think the Packers defense is kind of coming into their own. And think of all those years we had a really good offense, and the defense just killed us. And now here we are this year, and it feels like it's a bit of the opposite. But, these things can change pretty quickly. I thought this defense was absolutely great until they played Denver, and then they played Carolina and stunk. And, in San Diego, they gave up 500 yards. Right. It wasn't that long ago these guys just were like bumbling idiots out there. Right. But I feel like they're talented enough that games like they had against Minnesota shouldn't be the exception. It should be more the rule. But they certainly play better with the lead, Chris. Whether it's the scheme or the way they emotionally play, if they can get up on teams, and I think this defense is good enough to maybe keep them there.
It's the interrelationships between how the offense impacts the defense's play. Like getting up the lead is going to make the defense play, or makes the other offense play differently, which makes your defense play differently. Minnesota is a great example of that. This is a team that needs the running game to really be effective. And if they're playing from behind, they can't run as much as they like, and that really helps out, the Packers overall. Now, if the Packers had fallen behind and Minnesota could pound Peterson, the game might go very, very differently.
Yeah, and we're talking about how horrible the defense is.
And so the interrelationships, it's hard to separate. Is it really bad defense, or was the offense making the defense look bad by not putting up points? And Mason Crosby, we should mention him before we wrap up with this thing. I mean, the guy hit 5 field goals, and all of them while he was stoned, which is amazing by itself. The guy it wasn't just that he hit the 5 field goals. I think he might have hit the bullseye down the middle on each one. I mean, there wasn't any of this like against Detroit, the bounce field goal or that stuff. he obviously was off his game against Detroit. He probably didn't get the proper shipments in, and he was a little bit, he wasn't high enough, obviously, as we said in the headline. But the guy was absolutely nails. And
how the heck did he
that makes a big difference. His 5 field goals alone, that would have been enough to win 15-13.
Yeah, but how the heck did he miss that field goal against Detroit?
It was 52 yards, right? And then he hits 52 yards down the center by about 7 yards against the Vikings.
It's so strange. He must have slipped on the ground, or Mastay really did hit it with his hand. But I saw no reports that talked about that this week.
Nope.
That would be frontline news if that was really what happened. So they were either able to hide that, or it didn't happen. But man, I mean, he's so solid. Now Minnesota plays on was artificial turf,
right,
wasn't it?
Yeah.
So
but
slipping and
not
you
saw
getting
the field though. The field was in great condition, I thought.
At Lambeau?
Yeah, I mean, it didn't look. I mean, we were the 4th row, so we were pretty close. It looked like it was in terrific shape.
Sure. Well, it looks magical as a fan, but he did after he kicked it, he fell. So I mean, he ended up on the ground. But I just don't recall anyone talking about him slipping and falling either. So such a strange thing. I just feel like it was fate that the Packers were supposed to lose against Detroit. And maybe when they're in the Super Bowl this year, we'll look back and go, remember, we lost to Detroit? That was the turning point of the season.
Well, it might be. As we look back, that could have been the cold bucket of water that wakes them up. But I do agree with your premise, though. The offense is not where it needs to be. Yeah, they put 30 points on the board. I still think this was mainly a defensive win, and I'm not convinced that their offense is a smoothly running machine. You don't need to, get 500 yards of offense and, 350 yards of passing or whatever. You don't need to have gaudy numbers, but it's got to run smooth, and it seemed like the offense has been continually in fits and starts, and I'm not sure that you can count on this kind of performance where the defense is going to be so good that the offense doesn't have to be that good. I think you need a more consistent offense, because their defense is always going to be a kind of a bend but don't break kind of deal. And when you rely on that, sometimes there's going to be some busts sometime that happen. I kind of suspect it won't happen against Chicago. I don't want to make any predictions because I really thought they beat Detroit too. I think they'll do okay at home Thanksgiving night against Jay Cutler, but you really cannot rely on the defense to show up the way they did every game. You got to have more consistently on the offense. 5 field goals are great, but you got to convert some of those to touchdowns too.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, they didn't have as many punts as they did against Detroit, so that was a positive. They did have a lot of scoring drives. But I think that's the story of the season from here on out. Can the Packers figure out how to develop a meaningful passing game like we're used to? And if they can say, normal times they're a 10, and right now they're a 3. If they get to, say, a 6 or a 7 level, then they're going to be pretty tough to beat.
Yeah, well, they were certainly tough to beat on Sunday. I mean, I don't know if it was a dominant performance, but it was a convincing performance, especially once they got that field goal to start the second half. And, it feels almost like as I was thinking about my reaction, I don't know how you felt after the game. It wasn't so much the excitement of winning, but a relief that
there was
the 3-game losing streak is over. They're back in first place. If they had lost, they would have been effectively 2.5 games out of first, and really then you're playing for the wild card. Now it feels as though, order has been restored. And so it just felt, Yeah,
a little bit. I mean, it's marched in the right direction. We've got 2 more weeks here where they should beat Chicago, and I would think even away they're going to beat Detroit.
I would think so.
But I guess that's not a given.
No.
The Chicago game I feel more comfortable than at Detroit.
Always have trouble at Detroit for whatever reason.
Yeah. But then, they get 2 more games under their belt. That puts them at, 9-3 is pretty good position.
Yeah,
at that point.
9-3 is pretty solid.
Yeah, you've got a couple of tough games coming. I mean, Dallas now, Romo's back. Yeah. That'll be interesting, but that's at home.
And they're going to be a team that's playing. They've got, I think they're 2 games back in their division, And even though the record's not great now, they do conceivably have a chance of squeezing into the playoffs as the division winner. And they could be a team at that point that's, they're back against the wall and they'll absolutely need a victory. So Dallas, I think, is a team to be respected now that they got their quarterback back.
Yeah, they got the Raiders coming up. I think the real tough game will be at Arizona. I think that's going to be
very tough. That's a defense that flies around, and Packers will have, especially the way their offense has been playing, they'll be fully challenged against the Cardinals.
Yeah, that's almost a team that you think that if they're going to run the offense that they are running now with the 3 wide receivers, the tight end, the way they play, they sack the quarterback, the way they have good corners. Like, we match up terribly against Arizona. I wonder if that inverted wishbone is a better way to go and just try to maul that team as opposed to try to pass with them. But
it's all going to depend on Eddie Lacy. I'm watching this game, and he just came. You could see him limping off on that right ankle that's heavily taped. Is he going to be healthy if they want to do that? And it's got to affect the game plan. If you know that guy is just not going to be available, or if you can't count on him, that's going to affect your game plan. If you got to go with James Starks, you're probably going to look at more passing, because he's a little bit better in the passing game, I think. And you're probably not going to try to, run quite as much with that guy. I don't know. I mean, you don't know what the team is going to look like, and that's how many weeks down the line? Is that 3 weeks? Yeah, I think that's middle of December, right?
Which one? The Arizona game?
Arizona game?
Yeah, I have to look that up to see. But I know it's later, one of the later games.
Yeah, I mean, are they going to have at that point? Is they going to have Lindsley back? I mean, Bakhtiari, is he going to have another surgery he can't remember? I mean, there's a lot of factors that can happen between now and then. And as far as that goes, don't you remember what happened to Arizona last year? They were playing so well and they lost their quarterback, and their season just deflated instantly. You just don't know, and sometimes it's not losing guys; it's guys that are diminished, and I think we've seen that up and down in the Packer offense this year. You got a bunch of key guys that are just not quite themselves.
The games that they can win, they play home against Bears, at the Lions, home against the Cowboys, and at the Raiders. Those are 4 games that they could and should win. Let's say if they are the normal Packers, everyone stays healthy. Right. That's 11 wins,
and that should be enough to get in.
That should be enough to get in. They got the Vikings last game of the season at home. I mean, maybe against the Cardinals, you don't put it all on the line against the Cardinals. Can't catch them at that point. But, you're right. Last year they lost their quarterback and they completely took a dive.
Well, look at Minnesota's schedule coming up. They got a tough schedule. It might affect how you're going to play. If Minnesota's going to lose, a couple more games here, you might be able to, take it easy against Arizona, because Minnesota might not even be a factor at that point.
Yeah, that's very possible. I mean, if you beat the Bears, beat the Lions, you've pushed them further down, and it's conceivable the Vikings lose their next 2. We could be 2.5 in front of the Vikings, and with 4 games to play.
Yeah, and if that's the case, that will probably impact, what they're going to do with their guys. And maybe then you're not forcing Bulaga to play on whatever his injury is, his knee, I think it is, or Bakhtiari, and you're giving those guys a little bit of a break. Maybe you're giving Rodgers a bit of a break if he does in fact have a shoulder that's bothering him.
Yeah, Brett Hundley time.
Yeah.
Not Scott Tolzien. I don't want to see that.
Yeah, I saw Tolzien on the sideline thinking, you lucky bastard.
That's right. Collect that paycheck.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I think it might be time for some betting lines.
Now, here's the thing. Because of an interesting development that happened this week, we're going to change how we do the betting lines a little bit. Because we had 16 people play the betting lines this week, which caused
4 squared, isn't it?
That is 4 squared. Very, very good. You know your math. That created a 5-way tie for first place.
That's just too many. That's just too many.
As I mentioned, I went through the hotel room at the hotel and casino with the blue light, and having so many people in that room is creating sort of sanitary and
we're having a problem with
moral problems.
We're having some problems with fluids, is what you're telling me.
Yes, it's not that we're short of them, but something
too many of them.
Too much. So we need to have one person in the hotel at a time. And so what we're going to do from now on, we're going to like have our normal betting lines, but then we're going to have a tiebreaker at the end that's going to be a number specific, which I'll explain when we get to the betting lines. But let's first go through the one against Minnesota. All right, you ready?
Yep.
The first one was how many times will they target Devontae Adams? You said 9.5. I don't know what you were smoking on that one. What was the actual? See, they've targeted him.
I was
4 times.
I was smoking the stuff that Mason couldn't find.
Well, you should give it back to him. I took the under, and it was the under. Rushing yards by Adrian Peterson. You set the line at 105. I took the under, and it was the under as he rushed for
45.
45. So quite a bit off on that one. Here's another one. Number 3. How many catches will Perillo have?
Ooh.
You set the line at 4.5, and I took the over. It was the under.
How many catches the tight ends have? I know Rodgers had a couple, but that's...
Rodgers had 3.
Yeah, the tight ends weren't really a part of the offense at all.
No, I think that's a problem. So, and I wasn't the only one that took the over, so maybe I influenced the vote on that one. So the under had that one. I got that one wrong. How many rushing yards will Green Bay have? You set the line at 76, and I don't know why I did, but I took the over, and I was correct.
Yes.
So that was good. Number 5, how many punts will Green Bay have? You set the line at 6.5, and the number was, you have that one handy there? Let's see, Massey had 4 punts. Said the under, I got that one right too. I'm on a roll. How many sacks did Matthews have? You set the line at 1.5.
Yeah, I think he might have one, right?
My stats show he has 0.
Okay.
I
one
had
for
the
Peppers,
over.
One for Clinton Dix, 2 for Jones. So there's 2 other ones that I'm missing there. Yeah.
And then the turnover spread, Green Bay greater than Minnesota. You had -1.5. I took the over. I'm not quite sure how we did that math. I'm not going to do that anymore.
Please don't.
Please
don't.
If that means that Green Bay would have, I think he's got this reversed. I'm just going to. No, he's got it right. It's the over. That means that Green Bay only was a negative. We had 1 turnover more than Minnesota, correct? So
yes.
Negative.
There's only 1 turnover in the game, and that was the Peterson fumble.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure. Well, Mike has got this figured out. The over had it, so there's only 1 person that had the under, so they're just going to have to live with that. So anyway, that was for the betting lines. A number of people had 6 correct. Jared Stevenson, Dr. Klaus, Rich Holm, Brandon Knudsvig, and all I have is the first name of Kim. And in fact, Kim, if the differential turnover, that last one is correct, Mike has said that, right? I'm going to trust Mike. So we had 5 people who had 6 correct, and they are all going to be in the hotel casino. Well, interesting, it's going to be 4 men and 1 woman. So
that sounds like
one more woman than it's ever been in the casino hotel.
You might see on pay-per-view at that hotel. Yeah.
All right, we might have to show up and see what's going on.
Or that, or the Vice Squad.
Yeah, something. All right, you ready for the next lines here?
I think I'm pretty much set.
All right, you don't need to refer to your crystal ball or anything. You're ready.
I've been doing that for the last 90 minutes. So.
Yeah, that's not the same thing. Okay, number 1. Given how many sacks Green Bay had, and they usually sack Cutler quite a bit,
8. How
many sacks do you think Green Bay will have this week?
It's very tempting to think that it's going to be a bloodbath. But I'm going to put it at 3.5.
All right, I'm taking the over on that one.
Okay.
I think
okay.
Cutler just wants to be sacked, so I'm going to put that down. Number 2, another Cutler, is how many interceptions will Cutler throw?
Well, he is he's prone to that.
Yes, he is.
Especially against Dom Capers. Capers is, I don't know, got his number for some reason, but I'm going to put it at 1.5.
I'm taking the over on that one. Saying he tends to throw interceptions is saying bears tend to poop in the woods. That's a minor understatement. Number 3, how many rushing yards do you think Eddie Lacy will have this week?
Yeah, it was a good game. It was a good game against the Vikings, but I'm not sure for whatever reason that he is 100% back. Whether it's I think his attitude is better now, and I think that was his problem. As much as the ankle, I think there was some attitudes because he's a kind of a chill guy, right? You've got a scale that says he's cool. I mean, absolutely. So yards for Eddie Lacy, I am going to put that at. He won't have a terrible game, but I'm going to say 64.
Oh, man, I'm taking the over on that one. Unless his ankle's hurt. All right, like this one.
That's the thing, though. I mean, I'm prejudiced because I'm watching this and, see him going limping off here on that right ankle that's heavily taped. It's only 4 days until the game, and that's why I'm being cautious on that one.
All right, that's fair. Number 4, how many catches will Jeff Janis have?
Catches of what?
Catches of balls.
You mean like
a football
on the
passes?
The kickoff?
No.
Cleanly in the end zone or
receptions from Aaron Rodgers
from
the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, I will put that number. He's going to play because Abadaris is not available, and so he's going to see time from scrimmage. I'll put it at 1.5.
I figured you're going to do that. I'm taking the over on that. I'm going with my gut here and thinking he's going to have a couple extra plays. And after the game, people are going to be talking about him. That's my projection.
Okay, well, I hope you're right because they need him to show because next season they're not going to have James Jones, I don't think. I think this is a one-and-done deal. They'll have Jordy back, but they're going to need a guy who's going to, step up in a number 4 role. And so I certainly hope he's going to emerge. I
think they're going to have a top pick be a wide receiver next year would be my guess. But that's a long time from now. Number 5, flipping to Chicago, how many rushing yards do you think they will have? They don't have Matt Forte right now, so it'll be interesting to see if they're able to rush against the Packer defense. How many rushing yards do you think?
It is really going to be interesting to see what they can do running the ball. I think they might have more success passing, so they won't rush a lot. I'm going to put their team rushing number. Oh, this includes quarterback scrambles, but then again, he's not a very good scrambling quarterback. Let me put their team rushing yardage at 71.
All right, I'm going to take the over on that. I think I just think that's a little bit low. That's a good call. I'm going to go over. Okay. Number 6, this is going to make Mike have to work a little bit.
Good.
How many drops will the Green Bay receivers have? And Mike will be the judge on
the arbiter?
One. Yes.
Yeah, I think they're going to do a little better on that because they were not careful with the ball at all, and that was disappointing. I'm going to put the drops at 2.5.
2.5. All right, I'm going to take the under on that one
because that would be a good sign if they can hold it to under 2.5. In other words, 1 or 2 balls, then they're going to have a fine game.
Yeah, and Mike will have to. He'll be the final judge on that one.
He's drunk with power already.
Yeah, he is. That's right. He's gone from kind of an intern role to running the show here.
Exactly.
Number 7, and then I have one more, which is a tiebreaker.
Okay.
So, but number 7, the final one is when they retire Brett Favre's number. I'm assuming there will be at some point. Right? Yeah. They're going to probably televise it, and they're going to say they will announce his name. I'm sure while we're watching on TV. I'm assuming all this is going to happen. My question is, at the second after they mention his name, Brett Favre and the crowd goes crazy. Okay. Is he crying at that moment? Yes or no?
Now, what about glassy eyes? I mean, if we're talking glassy eyes and not like tears streaming down his face.
I think you know what a cry is. I think if it is welled with tears, that's a cry. Okay. If it's a little bit of misty eye, that's not. So I think Mike will be able to make the call on this one.
Yeah. So what are we saying? Is this a yes or a no?
It's a yes or a no.
I think the answer is yes.
Yeah, I think that's pretty obvious. Yeah. I think he's going to be a basket case the second he walks out of the game.
Yeah, I'm that. I consider this more the Bart Starr night than the Brett Favre night, but that's just me.
Oh, that's not right. But I did see that he is going to show up, which is actually fantastic.
Fans of a certain age, and I'm 10 years older than you are. And I as a kid,
Still.
I grew up. Bart Starr was the guy. He was my guy, and he'll always be my guy. So yeah, I mean that's and as great as Brett Favre was, and I enjoyed his playing and a lot of great memories with number 4, under center. Bart Starr will always be that guy for me. So that's why this is probably his last trip to Lambeau, and that's why to me that's what this is really all about is that guy one more time with number 12 and number 4, and that makes it pretty damn special.
Well, will they have Aaron Rodgers come out of the locker room at halftime? I don't know. Be there with the 3 of them?
I don't know that he will, but maybe when he comes back on the field after halftime, there might be a thing with the 3 of them, or maybe they do something before the game.
Well, it would be great to see that. I just think, halftime is about adjustments and all that kind of stuff. I suppose I give him a break of letting him come out for a photo opportunity with the 3 of them would be awesome.
Oh, man. Yeah.
But in fact, I might be crying when that.
Oh God, yes. I mean, it just should remind again. In my lifetime, I was born in 1959, and Bart Starr was struggling to stay on the roster at that time. But in my lifetime, you have 3 Hall of Fame quarterbacks. I've been able to watch them on my team. I mean, that's just freaky luck. That's just great.
Yep. Yeah. It's awesome. And so the tiebreaker is the longest reception from a wide receiver. Put down your number. There's no over-under. You just put that number down, and whoever is the closest. So if we have a tie for the 7, whoever gets closest to that number is the winner.
So I'm not setting any lines. People, though, when they submit their over and unders to Mike, they have to put this down.
Yeah. So, like, for example,
put their head down on their table.
Right.
Okay, great.
For example, like I would put down Jeff Janis will have well, it doesn't matter who, but 81-yard touchdown or just reception. It might not be a touchdown, but it's probably
the longest reception. Like this week, what was the longest reception this week? 37 yards?
Let's see. Receiving long is 37 by James Jones. That's correct. Now, that wasn't a touchdown, but that was the longest.
So
it
in other words,
if
I would say as my tiebreaker, I would say that I put down 37, and if I had 38 or 34, and I was the closest to that number, I would.
You win. There's no if you go over, you automatically lose. It's just whoever's closest.
So that's the tiebreaker. So we'll only have one person, and the floors won't be quite as sticky.
Right.
The Packers Therapy Hotel and Casino Presidential Suite.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
All right.
You might have to deal with police tape. And
it's going to be a mess because that blue light. We have to get a second blue light. I mean, it was terrible.
Burned out.
So here's the deal. If you want to play the over and unders with Chris and Dave, send your stuff to Mike, and here is the email address. It is mitnomiller@gmail.com. mitnomiller@gmail.com. So send it to Mike. It's actually Mike Miller, and he is our tabulator. Mike Miller is the tabulator.
Yeah.
And he will put that together, and he'll let us know who wins and who loses. And good luck to you all. As you know, the wheels are tilted in the house's direction, but hey, enjoy yourself anyway.
And Godspeed to you, Kim. Good luck.
Exactly.
I hope that you survive the week.
Hey, no one said that betting was, pretty.
Yeah. Well, and Kim, I don't know, it could be a guy's name. You might be sitting here listening like, oh, man, all my life I've been have this name, but so I shouldn't assume it's.
We've never had a woman.
But good luck to you.
We've never had a woman play the betting lines. We need to find out the gender here. Kim, let us know. You can contact us at Packers Therapy on Twitter. You can also send us an email, packerstherapy@packerstalk.com. We don't want any photographs, Kim, but male, female, it's one of those names, kind of like Chris, I suppose, goes both ways. So let us know, because it's maybe the first female participant in the Packers Therapy Hotel and Casino betting line. I mean, that would be exciting by itself.
That would be. We need to know that. The picture, I don't know why you say no pictures. That's not true. That's a very sexist thing to say. We've gotten pictures from our listeners before.
Yeah, one of them was Brett Favre, and it was, oh my goodness. That was
yeah, right.
Crocs, really? Okay. So, all right. Now, we do have people who have corresponded with us. I have to read one from our military attaché, Captain Dave. He tweeted us. In fact, he tweeted us within the last 24 hours. He said, I had a dream that I was smoking reefer with Mason Crosby last week. This week, no such dream. The results speak for themselves. Yes, sir. That is a member of the United States Marine Corps, Captain Dave Moberg. It's very good, sir. I wish you luck in becoming major one day. Also, we heard this week from Ty Kale, which is just a great name. I love saying Ty Kale. And he was in touch with us. Can't wait for Turkey Day. Indeed, we're looking forward to that as well. Also, Richard, a lot of really great tweets from Richard this week. He said, 12 will force all receivers to write, I will run the right route 100 times on the chalkboard. Janice asks, what is a route? Okay.
Yeah, fair enough.
Then he said,
he's fast.
Then Richard says, good sportsmanship by Cobb today, not waiting to blow out the Vikings by catching too many balls. He's a swell guy. And a final one, also from Richard. I'm not sure where Richard's from, but he must live on Twitter, I guess. He says, love watching the slow-mo replay of James Jones. Oh, wait a minute. That was normal speed.
Oh, see? Well, he's an equal opportunist in the receivers.
Well played, Richard. We appreciate those. I actually retweeted all three of those. Heard also from Greg Smith. We found out we have a second pastor. Now, we all know about Pastor Kevin in North Carolina. He is the team chaplain for Packers Therapy. We also have Pastor Logan from Colorado, I believe is where Logan is. And much like Pastor Kevin, takes his football seriously. Man of the cloth though he be, he gets a little ripe after the game. So, Pastor, good for you. We are glad that you are a passionate Packers fan and also a man of the cloth. Also, as usual, Guy checking in from London, Patrick from overseas as well, Ireland, I believe, right? Yeah. So thank you, everyone, for corresponding with us on Twitter. Love to get your tweets because 140 characters is about all I can have time to read. Let's see, what else? We also got email this week. Our guy Mike in the desert from Gilbert, or is that Gilbert, Arizona. Mike checking in. Thank you very much, sir. Glad you are still listening from Arizona. We mentioned Greg Smith listening. Pete Colshorn in touch this week. Very glad to hear from Pete. Now, we know Pete, we believe, is a spy, correct? He says he works for some kind of like agricultural thing, and we actually know that he's a spy. I'm not sure he's a double knot spy, but this is his cover story. I think
it's a trained killer.
Well, I'm sure. I don't think he's even a Packers fan, Dave. I think he's tweeting this stuff just for his cover. But he says he enjoys the podcast. Thinks we undervalue our wide receivers a little bit. He said that he would take our receivers over New England. So I'll let you and Pete duke that out. Pete, we appreciate you, though, tweeting us this week. Thank you so much. So for everyone that has emailed us and has tweeted us, we appreciate that much. Let us know where you're listening to the show. We do appreciate hearing from you, but it's fun to know. Dave used to have a map, but I think when you moved, you might have lost that in the move, but a map with pins in it from listeners from all around the world, and our friends in Australia, a lot of listeners in Europe, and, of course, Dr. Klaus is a part of our listeners from around the world. Soldiers listening to us in the Middle East. We have people in the wild, exotic locations like, I don't know, like Green Bay listening to us. So thank you. We appreciate all the listeners, and especially those that take a couple minutes and hit us at Packers Therapy on Twitter. Thank you so much. So, Dave, any popular culture before we wrap this one up?
Oh, man. only thing I forgot about that. The only thing that comes to mind, I watched Waterboy again this last weekend.
Of course.
Have you seen the movie Waterboy?
I've seen a little. It's Adam Sandler, and so
it is Adam Sandler. Adam Sandler at his best, by the way.
Is there such a thing as Adam Sandler at his best? I'm not sure that's true.
You know, if you like football and you haven't seen Waterboy, I would recommend that you watch that movie.
I don't like football.
It's pretty stupid, but I don't know. It hit the funny bone for me for a long time, and I just watched it again, and I think I've requoted many of those jokes, so it's not nearly as funny anymore. But man, there are just some classic things in there that I just love. I love that movie. That and Billy Madison, I think, are just must-sees. If you listen to this podcast, you must have a certain sense of humor that this would connect with. So
Adam Sandler, just unfunny to me. Just unfunny.
Always?
Always. I didn't like him on Saturday Night Live.
Ugh.
Just he's unfunny.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we're different.
Well, yeah, you went to Wheaton College, and yeah. You're a smart guy. You're one of the smartest guys that I know, which doesn't speak much for my friends.
No, that certainly doesn't.
And you went to what I would say is an elite private college. Yet you have some of the crappiest taste in movies ever. Some of the best too, but also just like Adam Sandler. I mean, it's like. Now I'm going to tell you what's funny. You know what's funny is Drunk History. If you have not seen Drunk History, it's on Comedy Central. It is there are 30-minute shots. There's 22 minutes, I guess, without the commercials. And I think I told you the basic premise of this when we talked last week. They get somebody drunk. Usually it's a comedian. Get them drunk, and then they have them recite something from history, whether it be a local history of the city. Sometimes they're organized by city or state, or sometimes just historical events. And so as they're reciting this, of course, they're getting stuff wrong and they're slurring their words and things. They're having actors, people you've seen, like real, name actors, act out these historical scenes as the people are narrating it. So they're getting things wrong and they're mouthing along with the words. And, it is great stuff. I recommend it. I believe it's on Hulu if you don't have Comedy Central. Drunk History, fantastic stuff. I give it 5 stars. Check it out.
The other thing I need to check out is I have heard that Fargo season 2 is out. I
am watching it. I
heard it's
4 episodes into it, I believe.
I hear it's great.
It's better than the first season. I thought was really good. This season's probably better.
Oh, I can't wait. I gotta. When someone recommended that, I heard it was out. I thought I'm between series right now. I started The Leftovers season 2, and man, is the first episode bizarre.
I wanted to hear what you thought about that. I emailed you yesterday. That was just freaking weird. I didn't think I had the right show on.
Yeah, it kind of starts like a 2001
exactly
episode and kind of gross and. Yeah, it's pretty bizarre, but I keep hearing good things about that as well.
Yeah, I'm 7 episodes into the second season, and The Leftovers has taken a left turn from what it was, and I think that's better than the first season, and Fargo is also better. It's hard, when you have a good show to make it better because usually you get maybe disappointed. These are I would agree. Both of those, if people aren't watching them, you can binge watch them if you haven't watched the first seasons, but definitely both of those shows are worth starting at the beginning and working your way on through.
All right. So much to do.
So much. But you know what? The great thing is we're coming up, at least in America, this is as a holiday, a long holiday weekend. It's kind of the beginning of the holiday season. Thanksgiving on Thursday. It's our reason for gluttony. That's what we do well in America. But a lot of us will have, a long weekend. So if you're looking to kind of, and especially if you live in northern climates where it's crappy outside, you're looking to binge watch something, this is the perfect weekend to do it. Strongly recommend, Leftovers, Fargo. There's so much good stuff out there that you can spend time with the family kind of hanging out and enjoying this stuff. Although, I got to warn you, Leftovers is kind of dark.
Don't watch any of these shows with the kids.
Yeah,
every single thing we mentioned.
True. I mean, and Fargo is also. It's dark stuff, but it's good and it's compelling. And in the same way, Breaking Bad, I guess, is compelling. That wasn't a cheery, happy show, but just engrossing. If you want some fun stuff, that I think you probably can watch with younger people. Drunk History will work for you. They bleep out all the nasty words. But then again, on the other hand, excess drinking, it's
not something to encourage. No, unless you're from Wisconsin.
No, but at least these people aren't driving. They do this in their homes. So there's no driving involved. It's just drinking, and there's a little bit of throwing up once in a while. But generally speaking, it's good, clean American fun.
Exactly.
All right, that's Packers Therapy for this week. Packers winners 30-13. Order has been restored in the NFC North. Packers back atop. Not going to be a big turnaround. Just a couple days from now, Thanksgiving night, it's the return of Brett Favre and Bart Starr to Lambeau Field. It's a night game. Should be great stuff. We will be back a week from now to talk about the Packers v. Bears. And until that time, I'm Chris.
And I'm Dave.
And that's Packers Therapy.
I'm Chris.
And I'm Dave.
And that's Packers Therapy.
Are you looking for some signed Packer memorabilia?
Look no further than Waukesha Sports Card.
If a Green Bay Packer can sign it, Waukesha Sports Cards has it.
Check our website for upcoming Packer player and legend signings.
Go to WaukeshaSportsCards.com.
Eddie Lacy, Mike Daniels, Gilbert Brown, Don Barclay, Micah Hyde, your Green Bay Packers, yesterday's legends and today's superstars. From corporate or nonprofit events to private parties, add some spice, hire a Packers player from Mayfield Sports Marketing. For details, just go to PackersTalk.com and click on Player Appearances.